Okay, and I'm all right, everyone. So welcome to today's webinar on clarifying your pronunciation in English. So here we go. Welcome. So first of all, let's start off with who am I and what am I doing here today? Okay, so once again, welcome. My name is Lisa Pernove, and I have been teaching business English for over 3 years. So I began my English teaching journey in East Asia, and now I've been working here with Talaera for about 15 months. So this means that I have experience working with English speakers from all over the world with a diverse array of accents. So welcome, everyone. In case you're not familiar with who we are here at Talaera, I'll just tell you briefly. So we're an online platform which offers business English trainings to corporate clients as well as individuals. Our lessons are one-on-one and taught by professionals. They're customized to the needs of each student. And today, because this is a webinar on the topic of pronunciation, I'll be doing my best to speak very clearly and just a little bit more slowly. So welcome, everyone. All right, so on today's agenda, when signing up, we gave you all an opportunity to ask some questions regarding pronunciation and accent. So some of those questions from you all included, why is accent important? How can I pronounce difficult sounds? And how can I improve on my own? Okay, let me just make sure my camera is on here. One moment, please. There we go. So sorry about that. Here we go. Okay, so now hopefully you see me and we'll continue on. So yes, just to reiterate, on today's agenda, we want to address your question. So why is accent important? How can I pronounce difficult sounds? And finally, how can I continue improving my pronunciation on my own? All right, so those questions all came from you all, and we're going to do our best to answer them here today. Okay, so now that we've heard a little bit about your concerns and questions, let's get started with the agenda. So there really is so much to consider on the topic of clear pronunciation and accent modification. Therefore, today, we're going to cover some of the more general topics and basic mechanics, okay? So we'll start off with the question, why is clear pronunciation important and how can I change mine? Next, we'll cover the basic physical mechanics behind the correct articulations or physically pronouncing each letter or sound. So we'll start off by reviewing the L versus R sounds, which really are targeting our East Asian English speakers. So we'll end up differentiating words like light versus right. Then we'll come to the ending NG sound, which is often particularly challenging for our Israeli English speakers. So we'll try to modify words that end in NG or ING. So they sound more like meeting versus meeting. Okay. Then moving on, we'll touch on the W versus V, which is often very challenging for our German, Russian, and Eastern European English speakers. So here we'll differentiate between words like west versus vest. Okay, moving on from there, we'll hit on the hard H sound. So this is often particularly challenging for our French and Israeli English speakers. Then we'll come to our TH sound. And this sound is actually particularly challenging for almost everyone who is a non-native speaker. So we'll look at words like this, that, and there. And then finally, we'll look at some words with silent letters, including silent B, silent L, and silent E. Okay, after that, we'll wrap up with some self-learning tips to continue clarifying your pronunciation on your own. Okay, but first, let's return to the question, why is clear pronunciation important? Okay, so going back to the importance, let's start off by acknowledging the fact that you do not need to get rid of your accent entirely. Okay, accents make us unique. They pay homage to our mother tongues as well as our countries of origin. And they could be a really important part of your unique personality. So, even within the English language, we do hear many different accents, right? We hear the British accent, the American English accent, the Australian accent, the Singaporean English accent, a lot of different choices. So there's a question here. Is one accent more correct than another? The answer is no, not really, okay? So I may be a bit biased, but in my opinion, I find that the Midwestern American English accent is really very clear because we actually pronounce each syllable distinctly. So therefore today, during this webinar, I will be teaching American English pronunciations, which fall within my personal purview. But please do keep in mind that if you're effortlessly understood by your target audience, then you're doing great. Okay, so you do not need to sound exactly like me. Our goal is to be clear, not perfect. So therefore, to reiterate our aim today, we want to ensure that you are familiar with the correct ways of articulating or physically pronouncing challenging letters, words, and sounds when speaking English. Our goal is to speak in a clear and intelligible manner, meaning your speech is easy to understand. So rather than saying something like, "What do you mean?" when you're confused, I would clearly articulate that same little sentence or question and say, "What do you mean?" All right, so please take a moment to actually grab a piece of paper and a pen. We are going to be taking some notes and participating in a few exercises throughout the webinar. And remember, no one can see you, including me, okay? So don't feel nervous, but this is an interactive webinar, so we'd really like you to participate by speaking aloud during the upcoming exercises. So I'll give you a moment here, just grab a piece of paper and a pen so you can take some notes. Okay, hopefully you got some paper and a pen and are ready to get going. So let's begin by acknowledging a few internal and external factors affecting an individual's pronunciation. First, we have environmental factors. So environmental factors include any constructive feedback you may receive from other people, as well as the amount of exposure you get to your desired accent. And that exposure could come from podcasts, from TV, from movies, as well as conversations in English. Secondly, we have some internal factors to consider, such as self-awareness. So self-awareness is the conscious knowledge you have of your own strengths and weaknesses when it comes to pronunciation. You can actually increase your own self-awareness by practicing in the mirror, which will provide you with visual cues, and by recording yourself, which can provide auditory feedback when you listen back. Another internal factor we need to consider is motivation. So motivation concerns your intrinsic or internal desire to improve your pronunciation and clarify your accent. So of course, this can vary over time, day by day, and it can also be influenced by external factors such as your boss or your colleagues and their feedback. So you can monitor your own motivation by setting personal or professional goals. Motivation tip. Okay, so for example, regarding motivation, you can commit to practicing your pronunciation exercises twice a day, or you even associating a specific place in your house or in your office where you go to practice your pronunciation exercises. So one day, even if you don't feel like practicing, still commit to going to that spot and then just standing there. But I do promise you there's a high likelihood that once there, you'll actually be inspired to end up practicing your pronunciation exercises. All right, so now that we've addressed those internal and external factors influencing accent and pronunciation, let's go ahead and delve into your pronunciation modification game plan. So again, to reiterate, our goal is to be clear, not perfect. Okay, so the first step is identifying your individual pain points. So what I mean by this is there a specific sound that's giving you trouble? Is it a vowel or a consonant? Is it your stress placement? Are they specific words that are troublesome? Or is it your intonation? So the first step in remedying incorrect pronunciation is by identifying those specific pain points so you can target them with drills and exercises. Second, we'll aim to get you to start hearing the differences by noticing both correct and incorrect pronunciations from other people. Then begin comparing your own sounds, words, and phrases, as well as sentences to other people's. You can do this with both native and non-native speakers. All right, so taking that a step further, you can try mimicking the physical mouth shapes, the syllable stress, as well as the sentence rhythms of accents that you like or of speakers you want to emulate or sound like. So let's try a quick activity which will get us on track for hearing differences in pronounced sounds. So please turn on your listening skills and try writing down what you hear. So grab that paper and pen. I'll read the list twice. Try writing down what you hear. We have ship, sheep, grin, green, and fit, feet. One more time. Ship, sheep, grin, green, and fit, feet. All right, so here are the word pairs I just said. How did you do? Were you able to hear the differences in the vowel sounds in the center of the words? All right, so we'll give you a chance to speak coming up. But lastly, and most importantly for our pronunciation modification game plan is to drill, drill, drill. Okay, so don't expect to see immediate changes in your pronunciation or accent. After all, you've probably spent many years speaking English and actually imprinting these incorrect pronunciation habits and techniques onto your brain. Therefore, it will admittedly take some significant dedication as well as practice to revise these patterns. Try not to get frustrated and congratulate yourself on incremental progress. All right, so let's move on now to our advice on how to improve or clarify your accent and pronunciation. Let's dive right in. So I know we have a lot of viewers from different cultures and countries all over the world here today. So I do want to begin by going over the correct ways of creating some of the most difficult sounds in the English language. I will be asking you to participate in some of these exercises as we familiarize ourselves with the mechanics of proper articulation to create the following sounds. So just a reminder, I cannot see you, so please don't feel embarrassed, just give it a try. All right. So let's begin with vowels and consonants. Let's review the difference. So vowels are the letters A, E, I, O, and U, while consonants are all the rest. Okay, let's break these categories down further by differentiating the consonants into voiced and unvoiced consonants. So when I say voiced consonants, I'm referring to the fact that when you pronounce the letter, you're going to actually feel a vibration through your vocal cords. So please try it with me, okay? So bring your fingers to your throat and say the words on the screen. That, fat. One more time. Vat, fat. Okay, so just focusing in on that first letter in each word, which letter was voiced? Again, meaning which letter created that vibration through the throat and vocal cords. If you said vat, you're correct. If you didn't feel that vibration when pronouncing the V sound, never fear. We'll actually come to the mechanics of that letter shortly. But for now, let's begin with the letters L versus R. So once again, differentiating between these two sounds is often particularly challenging for our East Asian English speakers. This is because these two letters are not distinctly represented and instead appear as a cross between the English L and R. The English R may be of particular interest to our Spanish speakers as well, because the Spanish R is much more rolled and elongated than our English R, which is shorter. So just as when I was learning Spanish, I had to focus on learning to roll my R's, when speaking English, you may actually need to focus on toning your R's down and shortening them a little bit. But anyway, let's start with the L. So to create the L sound, inhale through the nose, and then as you exhale through the mouth, allow the tongue to connect the bottom of the top front teeth. So right here. The tip of the tongue will actually leave the mouth and linger there for a moment, pressing up on the bottom of those top front teeth. Okay, so now here's your chance to try implementing these mechanics to create a clear L sound. Take your time and exaggerate or draw out the letter. So I know it may feel a little bit silly at first, sticking your tongue out, but remember, no one's watching. So try the L sound twice after me. L, L. Your turn. Okay, now let's try a sentence. So I'll read it once and then you read it once, please. Lisa loves lemons. Your turn. All right, so hopefully you tried verbalizing the letter L as well as the short sentence, and even assessed how your version sounded in comparison to mine. So keep that self-assessment in mind or make a note so that you know which sounds or letters require more attention and personal practice from you in the future. For now, let's move on to R. So to create this sound, begin by closing your teeth. Then inhale through the nose and open your lips slightly to make a growling sound, like an angry dog ready to attack. Okay, so you may notice that your tongue is actually curling back behind your lower front teeth. Let's try it. Inhaling through the nose. One more time. So you can feel your tongue curling back slightly behind the lower front teeth. So let's take a moment to practice both of those sounds with some minimal pairs. Okay, so minimal pairs are great exercises to target sounds or letters that challenge you because they rhyme and they only differ in that targeted sound. So first I'll ask you to listen. Please write down the following minimal pairs as you hear them. I'll read the list twice. Get ready to write. Here we go. Lap, rap. Law, raw. Alive, arrive. Class, crass. And if you're up for an extra challenge, try these two words. Regularly and clearly. So those are extra challenging because they have both target sounds in each word. I'll read once more. Lap, rap. Law, raw. Alive, arrive. Class, crass. Regularly, clearly. Okay, so here are the answers. Now it's your turn. So please take your time and read those minimal pairs aloud. So be critical of yourself and try to employ those mechanics we just discussed. Remember to make a note if you're not happy with one of the sounds or feels of the words pronounced. Okay, so I'll wait for you here. Take your time. All right, so I imagine that's sounding great. Moving on, our next challenging sound is the ending NG sound. So while I don't speak Hebrew and have yet had the pleasure to visit Israel, I do have a lot of Israeli students. So what I have observed is that Israelis often carry over their strong, fully pronounced G as a G. Okay, so this sound is often appears at the end of a word. So it would sound like something G or something K. So while we do actually require this G sound in words like gut or gonna, when the G appears in the ending NG or ING suffix or word ending, we should not be pronouncing this final G as G. Rather, to create this ending NG sound, what you need to do is actually lift the back of the tongue so that it connects to the roof of the mouth, and that will close off the throat. So the front of the tongue does not make contact with any other part of the mouth. And you may actually notice that the noise is being released through the nose, but you can still feel that vibration through the throat. Okay, so this can be a little bit tricky, but let's give it a try. So again, please first listen and write down the pairs as you hear them. Then I'll give you a chance to speak. We want to focus on cutting off the G at the end of the word before it becomes G. All right, so I will read the list twice. Thin, thing. Sin, sing. Kin, king. One more time. Thin, thing. Sin, sing. Kin, king. All right, so those are the answers. Now it's your turn. So again, try to be a little bit self-critical as you speak and listen to your pronunciations. Make a note if this is a sound that you struggle with and think requires more practice. So please read the list and I'll wait here. All right, hopefully you gave that a try. So the next challenging letters we'll be looking at today are the W and V. So just as differentiating the L and R is tricky for our East Asian English speakers, the W and V differentiation is often challenging for German and Russian English speakers. So to make the W sound, what you want to do is inhale again through the nose and then make a small circular O with the lips. So as you exhale, create a W sound. And you'll notice that the small O of the lips actually releases into a larger O shape. Let's try it twice. W. W. Your turn. All right, now let's go on to the V. So to create the V sound, inhale again through the nose and then gently rest the top front teeth on the lower lip. As you exhale through the mouth, allow the top front teeth to vibrate against the lower lip. Try the V by saying vibrate twice and really elongate the V sound to familiarize yourself with what I mean when I cue top front teeth vibrating against the lower lip. Let's read it twice. Vibrate. Vibrate. Your turn. All right, great. So let's try some minimal pairs for the W and V sounds. I'll read first and then it will be your turn. V, we. Vest, west. Vet, wet. Vine, wine. Veil, whale. Okay, please read the list. Okay, so hopefully that was sounding good and you were really feeling that vibration for the V and maybe even seeing yourself create that W with the W. Let's try one more exercise to practice these two letters. So I'll ask you to try a technique called shadowing. And this technique involves repeating me word for word as I read the passage on the screen. Okay, so this is a great passage because it includes that ending NG sound as well as the tricky TH. So we're gonna read together, beginning now, nice and slowly. We were very excited when we received the invitation to the wedding. We hadn't even heard that Victor and Whitney were engaged. The wedding will be in Vermont, in a very small town called Walden, on Wednesday, July 27th. It is a bit unusual to have a wedding on a Wednesday, but we'll just plan a vacation around it. All right, so now that we've covered the challenging L and R, the W and V, as well as the ending NG sound, let's move on to some tricky unvoiced consonant sounds. So to review, unvoiced consonants refer to the consonants that don't actually produce the vibration from the vocal cords as you articulate them. So let's start off with that hard H unvoiced consonant. The hard H is often challenging for Israeli as well as French English speakers. So to create this hard H, inhale through the nose and then exhale through the mouth so strongly that you would be able to feel your exhalation on your hand, huh, or you'd actually fog up the glass of a mirror with your breath. So let's try that twice. You can actually put your hand up if that's helpful. Huh. Huh. All right, so let's try a few minimal pairs with that hard H. Please take your time and read the following pairs aloud. So this time you go first. All right, so I imagine that's sounding great, but just take a moment to compare your pronunciations with mine. I'll read the list now. Yappy, happy. Air, hair. Art, heart. All right, so hopefully you gave that a try and it was sounding good. If not, no worries, just make a note so you can practice more in the future. For now, we'll be moving on to the TH sound. So again, this is one of the hardest sounds in the English language for non-native speakers. This sound is particularly challenging because it doesn't appear in many other languages. Additionally, learners often feel a little bit silly or embarrassed when they first find out that they have to stick their tongue out of their mouth to properly pronounce this letter combination. So, gentle reminder, no need to feel embarrassed. Okay, so all of these pronunciations may feel a little bit awkward or strange at first. But as you memorize the proper way to articulate, you won't need to focus so much on the physical mechanics, nor will you need to slow down or exaggerate each sound so much. With practice, these sounds will begin to naturally integrate themselves into your fluent speech. And the fact that you're sticking your tongue out slightly will actually pass out of your consciousness. Never again will you encounter a look of confusion when you definitively respond to the question, how many would you like? With a clear 3 instead of a confusing tree. Okay, so let's give it a try. To create the TH sound, inhale through the nose and then exhale through the mouth, allowing the tongue to stick out. You must leave a small gap between the tongue and the top front teeth so that your exhalation can escape, creating the unvoiced TH sound. So let's give it a try. Okay, wonderful. Now let's read some minimal pairs. I'll say the list and then you repeat, please. We have tree, 3. Tanks, thanks. Sheet, sheath. Your turn. Wonderful. So in case you still believe that you can actually create this TH sound without sticking your tongue out, allow me to persuade you otherwise. So if the tongue remains inside of the mouth with teeth closed, as you exhale, you're going to get an S or a Z sound. So it'll sound like sat or zat instead of that. If you open your teeth but don't actively stick your tongue out, you'll get a D or an F sound. So it would sound like fret instead of threat, or dare instead of there. So if you watched closely, you'd have seen that my tongue did indeed leave my mouth and linger outside briefly when I correctly pronounced the TH sound. So let's give you another chance to try out some more minimal pairs with this TH sound. Please consciously read the pairs on the screen. You go first. Okay, so once again, these minimal pairs should sound like sat, that, fret, threat, dare, there. All right, so we've covered the internal as well as external factors affecting your pronunciation and the proper mechanics to physically articulate challenging letters and sounds. So now I'd like to briefly touch on some rules regarding silent letters. So let's begin with the silent B. So take a moment. Can you think of any rules or example words where we encounter a silent B? If nothing comes to mind, no worries. So the first rule is that when a B follows an M, it is unpronounced. This rule is demonstrated in the following words. So I'll give you a chance to read this list aloud first. Take your time and do your best. All right, so now I'll read them. Compare your previous pronunciations with mine and remember to make a note if any of your pronunciations sounded considerably different or if you don't know the definitions for any of these words. There are always more opportunities to learn. Here I go. I'll read the list twice. climb, thumb, comb, bomb, succumb, limb. Once again, climb, thumb, comb, bomb, succumb, limb. All right, so hopefully those sounded good and maybe a little bit familiar for you. So the second rule of silent B is that we don't pronounce the B when it follows a T. So again, please try to think of some words that fit within this rule. All right, here we go with some words. So again, please, you go first and try reading these 3 words aloud. They should sound like subtle, debt, and doubt. Once again, subtle, debt, and doubt. All right, great. So next we're going to talk about the silent L, which you may be a bit more familiar with. So we don't pronounce the L in its usual way when it follows the vowels A, O, and U. So once again, please read the words on the screen aloud, and I'll wait for you. All right, so now I'll read them as a reference. They should sound like walk, talk, salmon, yoke, and folks. Once again, walk, talk, salmon, yoke, and folks, which, on a side note, is a great gender-neutral term for addressing groups of people, and it's actually seeing a resurgence in popularity these days. So folks, let's finish up by talking about the 3 possible ways of pronouncing the ED ending when regular verbs appear in the simple past tense. So let's start off with 2 examples. Looking at the first word on the screen, which is the correct pronunciation? Asked or asked? If you said version 2, you're correct, asked. Okay, let's try one more. So looking at the second word, which is the correct pronunciation? Determined or determined? If you said version 1, determined, you're correct. Very nice work. Okay, so let's review the rules for the silent E when pronouncing ED in the simple past tense. So correctly pronouncing ED in the simple past tense is extremely important because of the frequency with which we use this tense with regular verbs. So the first option appears ID or id. So we must utilize this ending pronunciation when the verb ends in a D or T sound. So try pronouncing the following words on the screen underneath id and make sure you're employing that id ending. You go first. They should sound like decided, ended, and wanted. All right, wonderful. So the second possible pronunciation of ED ending is the D sound. So we employ this pronunciation when the verb ends in a voiced sound, either a vowel or a consonant, and includes those letters seen on the screen. So please do note that this is the most common pronunciation of ED in the simple past tense. So let's try the following words. You read first, please. They should sound like saved, agreed, believed. Perfect. So the final possible way of pronouncing ED in the simple past tense is with the T sound. So we use this pronunciation when the verb ends in an unvoiced consonant sound, including P, F, S, C, H, S, H, or K. So give the following words a try and make sure the ending sounds like a T. You go first. Those words should sound like stopped, laughed, and promised. All right, so we've gotten through factors affecting pronunciation and accent. We've outlined a game plan to clarify your pronunciation. And then finally, we've gone through the mechanics of how to properly articulate some of the hardest sounds for non-native English speakers. So as I mentioned earlier, pronunciation and accent reduction is a vast topic, and today's webinar only touches on some of the most important basics. So future areas of study could include a look at intonation and stress, linking and pausing, just to name a few. So if you are interested in embarking on a deep dive into the topic of pronunciation, we can always help you with individualized one-on-one lessons, or even by creating a company-specific webinar for your employees' curiosities and needs. But to wrap up today's webinar, I'd like to give you a few more ideas of ways to practice on your own. So, drill, baby, drill. You may be aware that I'm not actually referring to the tool, a drill, but rather to the verb drill, which means to train or learn by repetition. So as I mentioned before, you can drill minimal pairs to target challenging sounds. Try it by first starting off in front of a mirror so that you can visually verify that you're correctly articulating sounds according to the mechanical cues we discussed earlier. Next, you can try reading a text aloud to a dictation application on your phone. Then read the dictated text back to see what your phone's AI understood correctly. You can also watch movies or television clips and follow along with the script. Then try actually acting out or mimicking the actor's pronunciations, intonations, and syllable stress. You can also learn IPA, which in this case does not refer to the beer India Pale Ale, sorry about that, but instead refers to the International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA. So the International Phonetic Alphabet was developed in the 19th century to accurately represent each distinct sound in a language with a symbol. So if you've ever seen those little symbols next to words in the dictionary thesaurus, that's what they refer to, the International Phonetic Alphabet. Or you can also always get more support from us at Talaera by scheduling a free trial lesson. All right, so we do have just a few minutes left to address some more of the questions that you all have sent in. So one of the questions that we saw a lot was, how can I naturally pronounce regular verbs ending in ed in the simple past tense and then distinguish them easily from the present tense? So I believe we already covered the first part of the question. So again, we have those three choices. The ed can be pronounced id, id, it can be pronounced d, or it can be pronounced t, t. Okay, so the next part of the question, how can we distinguish them easily from the present tense? So we have some simple past tense transition words that can kind of give you a heads up that the rest of the sentence or thought will be continued in the simple past tense. So if you ever hear transition words like yesterday, in the first place, previously, before, or last week, last month, last year, the rest of the sentence is most likely going to occur in the simple past tense. So try to look out for those cues. Another question that we got a lot was, how can I speak more like a local? So obviously this is going to take quite some time and practice, but I do have a few tips. So I would first recommend try to avoid translating directly from your native language, right? Because a lot of the time the grammar is going to get messed up, and maybe some of the idioms or phrasal verbs or even slang is not going to translate well. So try to begin thinking in the English rather than thinking in your native language and then translating. I do know this is easier said than done, of course, but it will come with time. I would also recommend that you consume local media. So this local media could include newspapers, it could include news as well as magazines from your local area. So this will help you get a little bit of a better understanding of the slang that's often used, as well as some of those pop culture references that could come up. Finally, I would encourage you to learn some phrasal verbs. So that could sound like come across as, or you can also learn some idiomatic phrases like cut corners. Okay, so those are just a few basic examples of ways to sound more like a local. So now what? I really hope that you learned something helpful today. I'd love to hear your feedback on this webinar, and we'd be also very interested to hear what types of topics you'd like to learn more about in the future. So here are some final resources from us to help you continue clarifying your pronunciation and accent on your own. So we'll give you access to today's webinar slides. We have also created a YouTube channel, a Talaera YouTube channel, where we've broken down these sounds and the mechanics for them. So you can reference that as well. We've created a free ebook, which you can get by signing up. And finally, we always encourage you to contact us to learn more about our different business English training options. So again, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you are well. Have a great day. Thank you.